I'd like to call to order Apache Junction Water District Special Meeting to order. Roll call.
Chairman Wilson,
Yep, here.
Board Member Cross,
Here.
Board Member Heck,
Here.
Board Member Johnson,
Here.
Board Member Nesser,
Present.
Board Member Soller.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chairman.
Thank you. Discussion from proposed district budget for fiscal year 2023-24 to include proposed rates, fees, changes, or charges, excuse me, applicable during the fiscal year, and classification and comprehension plan for district employees. Mike.
Good evening, Chairman Wilson and members of the board. Quick presentation tonight on some proposed rates, budget, and also our class and compensation study for fiscal year 23-24. Give you some background here. So here's our existing budget from 2021. We roughly spent $5.6 million here. We earned about the same amount that year. And then we budgeted last year $13.7 million. We were using some of our reserves to fund some additional projects we had with wells and booster pumps and some that pipeline we approved last week, so different things we had there. So we're projected to spend roughly about $15 million this year. For next year, 2023-24 budget, we're looking at proposing a revenue resource with our proposed rate increases of roughly $11 million. A lot of these, the big dollar amounts are coming from our system connection fees, which is our connection fees that we charge new development out there that provide for either building bigger tanks or larger pipelines or drilling for more production or expanding our water treatment plant. So those are the big dollar amounts that come in there. And then also our water resource acquisition fee that we have here to go out and purchase additional water supplies in the future. A lot of those funds go into a savings account until we have a major project we need to do, and then we'll fund them through those revenues that we get from those. So typically our operating revenue is roughly about $5.6 million here. We have some debt service that we have to pay. We had a 2008 loan that we paid off this year. So as you can see here, we dropped from 1.1 million to roughly about 800,000 next year. So I think we have about 5 years left of the WIFA loan that we took out to build our surface water treatment plant roughly about 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So getting through that process. We do always carry a contingency as part of this, just in case we have an emergency that comes up if a well failure or something fails at our plant. We always have that as part of our budget. So in total, for expenses next year, we're looking at roughly $11 million. Funding that a little bit from, as you can see here, some of our reserves that we have from in the past, because we are building some of those larger pipelines or upgrading a booster pump station to fund those, or to supply those additional needs from development that is not in the superstition area down south so far. Any question on our proposed budget so far?
Your Honor.
Chairman.
Under the operating grants and contributions, you have $1 million. Where are you expecting that?
So WIFA has current loans or grants out there currently. We're looking, as we applied last year with the Bureau of Rec, to do a water conservation grant to get radios for our existing meters. So this goes back to, I think we talked a little bit about last year. I guess, Councilmember, you weren't there. So we applied for a grant to the Bureau of Rec. We did not get it this year. WIFA has the same water conservation grant. We'll probably apply for it with the Bureau of Rec also. So currently, the way we read our meters is we have a touch read gun. So we go out and we touch every meter, puts in a device for us, and then we can take it back to our billing system and brings it across. The next step in that is in all of our new development, we put a radio with it. And the radio now, currently we drive by, but as this new development develops to the south, we're going to put up a radio tower, so it's constantly sending a signal back to it. Okay? So if somebody gets a leak right now, we don't read the meters except for every 30 days. So we can't, if somebody gets a leak the first day, we may not notify them that they have a high bill until 30 days later of, hey, this is what's going on. With radio reads, we can set it up that if we see a meter running for 24 hours, it'll send us an alert. Hey, want to contact this owner? Possibly have a pool or something. Check it so we can save that water and the customer doesn't get a huge bill at the end of the month. So that's what our next step is as part of this process. So that's what we're reaching out to try getting grants to fund the rest of our existing customers, our remaining 40 or 4,000, 4,500 customers we have, to get them on radio reads so that we can implement it to the north also.
Thank you.
Man, I could have used that. I've had that happen.
Yes.
So, Mike, for the charges for services, now, we're increasing the fees this year, correct?
Correct, those are our rates, and I'll go over that a little bit more in detail here in a
Okay,
little
all right,
bit.
because it looks like we're actually we're budgeting fewer dollars than we budgeted last year.
Correct. So some of those rates that we received this year were supplying raw water to our development to the south. So our water sales is up because they're doing a lot of dirt work and doing a lot of construction in that area. So we're predicting it may go back down to where we currently are just when we're serving residential customers and commercial and not growth like that.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say I'm impressed that your expenditures and your income matches perfect.
Well, that helps with our reserves. That's why we keep some reserves. That's so we can fund those and make sure that we have enough.
That was
money.
a lot of hard work to get those to match up exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
So just a couple of quick, the big projects we're working on next year. You guys approved the purchase of materials this year for the 16-inch bidirectional line between the water plant and the sewer plant. We're looking to install that next year, so it's another additional $750,000, so we split that over 2 fiscal years. We will also be rolling out our new utility billing software, roughly $100,000 as part of that. Staff has just recently went out to the city of Buckeye that has municipal utility billing to see how they did it. So we're working through that process. We're hoping early August we'll go live, maybe even July, but we'll see how things go as we're implementing it. And then we're also looking at a pilot study for advanced water treatment. So this is putting something at the sewer plant to take their effluent and actually make it potable water. We won't be delivering it to any of our customers. We'll end up putting it back into our non-potable water system to deliver to irrigation and things for now, but we want to approve our system. So as ADEQ goes to approve new direct potable reuse or advanced water treatment, we can show them that our process works on how we went through the steps and designed all that. So it's just kind of our pilot study to get it going. It may take us a few years to build it a year, and then they're going to probably require us to run this pilot study for a year or two to prove all the treatment processes that we're looking at can do what we want it to do. Okay. We also are working with Salt River Project on our Verde River sedimentation mitigation or raising of Bartlett Dam. So we're in the 3rd year of our 3-year study. So we have to fund $100,000 of that we signed a contract with them, so we're working through that process. And then also we received 817 acre-feet of non-Indian agricultural water, and we pay $325 because we financed it through the Central Arizona Project. So those water resource acquisition fees that we take in also pays for this $325,000 we pay each year, because that's a resource we're going to use in the future for future developments. As you guys are aware, Central Arizona Project and Colorado River are having shortages. 10 years ago, as you can see on my little graph here, water wasn't that expensive. But as we go through these tiers of reductions in water supplies and less water flows through the canal, prices slowly move up. So our capital charge is for keep the water, so we have it all the time. So it slightly went up. Obviously, it keeps going up each year. But we're almost 4 times the amount we were 10, 15 years ago. The next phase is our operations and maintenance. So with less water coming down the canal, we still have the same pumps and we still have the same miles of canal to maintain. Less water, less sales means higher cost to operate that canal, so we have to pay those fees. So it's continually to climb, especially with all the reductions that are happening on the CDP or the Colorado River. Okay.
Well, question. Well, with all the new houses coming in, will that change these figures then
No, well,
drastically?
we currently take all of our CAP water,
Okay,
whether we recharge it or do different things with it, so it will not change any of these costs
Okay.
that we have. Okay. And we're constantly trying to balance our revenues and expenditures. We don't want to overcharge and have too much money, and we don't want to overspend and not have enough money, so we're constantly trying to balance it and be reasonable with all of our customers so that we're not hitting with them a big rate increase. So we'll talk a little bit more about our proposed increase here too. So we do a rate comparison with all the other cities near us. There's probably another 10 cities that I do a comparison, but there's some higher and there's some lower than what we are currently. So this is for our base rate. Our base rate is your monthly minimum that you pay, no matter if you use water or not. As you can see, we're currently at $28.60. The average base rate across these 10 utilities is roughly $24.78. Mesa is roughly around $30 for their base fee. So is Arizona Water Company after their next rate increase. And Maricopa also is relatively high here. So we're looking possibly for an increase this year. We're proposing to you to raise our base rate up to $30.03. How does that affect our existing customers? I guess we'll come to that in a second, sorry. But we're proposing a rate increase on the base rate of 5%, nothing to our commodity rate. Our commodity rate is per 1,000 gallons, so we have 3 tiers. And also, we're not changing the tiers from, right now, they're 0 to 4,000, 4,000, 10,000, and 10,000 and above. So we're not asking for any changes to those currently to reduce those. So we're leaving those the same, but only the base rate would increase by 5%. If you lived in the county, on the county islands here, they pay a different tax rate. So their bills were actually lower in the past. They slowly have crept up over. They pay actually a little more than what we pay in the city now for the same water resources. So we're, again, proposing a base rate increase of 5% and a consumption rate increase of 5%. No change to the tiers also. Okay? So what does that really mean in dollar amounts to our customers? So if you're a city customer, on average bills, roughly 7,500 gallons that you'd use per month, currently you would receive a $70 bill for your water. Base rate of $28.60, consumption rate of $34.70, plus your taxes, that's where we get here. We're proposing this rate increase just to the base rate, which would bring it up to $30.03. Your consumption would stay the same, and then in the end, it'd be $71.59, which is a $1.58 increase, roughly 2.2%. So we did a study in the past that recommended staying between 2 and 5% on rate increases, so we don't have rate shock. So if we waited 5 years to do this, we'd be asking for 10 or 20% increase. So we slowly increase them over the years, so when somebody doesn't see a big $5 to $10 jump in their water bill, they slowly see it creep up over time. So we've been utilizing that probably since I've been here for the last 10 years and continue to do that. If you lived in the county, your current base rate is $29.46. We'd be raising it to $30.93. Again, they're at $80.53, so roughly about $10 higher than our current customer. They'd be at $85 roughly for the proposed rates, roughly a $4 increase because the commodity rate or the consumption rate is going up as part of this. So roughly a 4.7% increase to their rates if you're a customer living in a county island for 7,500 gallons per month. Here's a comparison between city and county. It's roughly about $13 difference between if you lived in the city or if you lived in a county to provide water service to your property for 7,500 gallons. Any questions on those, our base rate and commodity rate so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Looks like there's kind of a selling feature right there from why a county island should consider being in the city of Apache Junction.
For $13?
Over the long haul, every little bit helps. That's at least 2 Starbucks coffees, right?
Or one large latte.
The only question I have, go back about to that chart, 3-4 charts ago, is,
This one?
no, keep one more, 2 more.
Graph.
The CAP one?
The one with all the cities and their
Oh,
rates,
sorry. Yep.
right here.
Yes.
Why is somebody like, why are we as high as Mesa and then places like Gilbert and Queen Creek are so much lower what they're charging their base water rates?
Some of those, it depends upon what kind of water resources you have and
Okay.
how you do your rates. Queen Creek notoriously has been on well water. They haven't done a renewable resource where we moved to roughly 10 years ago when we built our surface water treatment plant. So a lot of times the groundwater is cheaper, but what you don't also see here is we're a designated provider. Okay, so we pay for the recharge if we had to, if we weren't using a renewable resource. So if we used groundwater, we'd have to recharge it, okay? We're a designated provider, so we pay for it as the district, and it's in our rates here. If you're in Queen Creek, they're a non-designated provider. So they have to join the CAGRD per development out there. And on a tax bill, they get taxed to recharge that water on the back end. So their rates are lower because they don't have to pay that rate up front, they pay it on their taxes.
Okay.
So you don't see a lot of that, and it depends upon what kind of cities are designated and what are non-designated cities. So that's why you see some higher and some lower as we go through this. Again, and it's based on, Mesa has surface water treatment, a lot of Queen Creek does not. Gilbert's half and half, they have a lot of wells, and they also have surface water. Arizona Water Company is all groundwater, and they do have some surface water they're currently using. So again, it just depends on the water, the type of water you're using, and then also your treatment processes and different things.
Okay. I mean, it was kind of, somebody asked, I'd go, well, I don't know. And I kind of get tired of saying I don't know all the time. But it's kind of hard to say, well, Gilbert's big, but they pay less, and,
Right.
But I didn't know anything about the different types of water. Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
So, on what Tess was saying, then, does it come out fairly average does it average out, in other words, when they get their tax bill? Are they actually paying the same amount as we're paying, or would that tax added at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, however it's?
Right. I would say it's pretty close, but I have to do some research and get back to you guys on that.
Okay.
Just like we're paying CAP water, Central Arizona groundwater replenishment is part of that. So as you've seen those fees before going up,
Right.
those are going up also. So it's roughly about $800 an acre foot to replenish that. So your average home is roughly about a third of that. So they're paying $200 a year. Divide that over your 12 months, and you kind of come up where we're at.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. No one else? Okay.
Next one is our system connection fee. So we had a system connection fee study that we did last year, so our rates went up quite substantially last year. We're proposing another rate increase of 8.5%. So we go to the CPI index, or CPI, and we look what the increase in construction costs has been over the last year. It's roughly about 8.5%. So we're proposing an 8.5% increase to our system connection fee here. This is only for new development. So this would be if a new development came in and we had to build those booster pump stations or additional tanks or a well, these are the additional costs that would apply to build that infrastructure. So we're just looking to move it along with the construction price index, or CPI, that we have.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. Is this a one-time fee? If I'm building a housing project, I pay one time to get the connections?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. This is your, like your,
Per house.
Per house, right?
yes, your development fee that would be, we have at the city, but this is the water system connection fee.
Okay.
Just seems high, but I know it's not compared to other states and other places.
It is high, I'm not gonna lie to you there, but the price of construction in the last 5 years has shot through the roof, and that's why these numbers keep going up.
But what are you actually providing the customer for that fee? A tapping sleeve, a meter? The trench is probably already dug by the developer or by the,
That's
the
correct.
builder?
This fee does not cover any of that. This fee is strictly for the increase in size of tanks. So instead of building a bunch of 100,000 gallon tanks, we can build a 1 million gallon tank. Or if we need to go drill a new well, that's roughly $3 million. We can go out and drill that well. It's their little incremental cost to build those major infrastructure that we need. It's not just to do a service to them. It seems like that because they're paying it per unit to their house, but it's really all the infrastructure that we've built today and the future infrastructure to service their property so that we can oversize things.
So then there's, I'm sorry.
Why does, so if this is for building what you just said,
Right?
why do just the new places have to, why doesn't everybody pay for that then?
So everybody has, right? When they signed up when they put, they paid at one time. But it was cheaper 10 years ago.
Okay.
They did their system connection fee. Now, as over time, it slowly creeps up. So everybody slowly paid for this to pay for that bigger lines that we put in,
But
or another
My
line.
house that was built 50 years ago probably didn't pay a whole lot.
But your
But I
lines are-
get the advantage of now of what I paid very little into, is what you're saying, to my future.
Well, you already paid for that well that was there 50 years ago, right?
Okay,
I'm not asking you to pay for it again. So now we're paying for it in rates so that we can maintain or replace that well in the future. So that's where your dollar amounts come from. This is strictly for new development that we didn't have a customer in place. They didn't pay for the tank that you already have been paying for to maintain and everything. This is for that, to build a bigger tank so that we can supply water to those
but
new
is that
customers.
only going to be for the use of the new homes? I mean, my home won't benefit from that?
It does because it makes a better system,
Okay,
but you paid for it initially when your house was built, even though we had a smaller system at that point in time.
okay.
So maybe a way to help think about this is if we just stayed at the 40,000 people we had, or we have. Since I've been here, we've at least built one new tank, and now we're building a new tank, right? A massive one, right? But let's say we start growing, and we have a neighborhood to the southeast part, Tomahawk and Baseline, or somewhere in that area, and it's 500 times 6,000. We're gonna need to do another tank. This, right, Mike? This goes to build that new tank. So there's now, instead of one tank at our place at Baseline and at Public Works, now there's two, right?
Right.
How much does one of those cost now?
$5 million.
We hope that this is enough. My worry is if we don't keep up with this number, the existing tax base will actually subsidize that $5 million tank. Is that another analysis that might help?
So what I'm hearing is that you're looking at what the capital outlay would be for the items that you would need to purchase and looking at how many tracts of land that may service and coming back to a rate that's fair.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a,
It has to be rational nexus. We do the study every few years, just like the city.
Yep.
And it has to meet that rational nexus test. And if it doesn't, and we get challenged, we have to be able to support it.
correct. So they do a whole report for us stating, okay, here's the infrastructure we need to service this many new homes, and then they start dividing it out, and this is how we come up with this number.
Okay, one other question. The multifamily, okay, so that's one connection for a multifamily. Now, is that a multifamily that's a duplex, or if it's an apartment building and it has 25 apartments, is it the same $6,360?
It is the same currently. And typically, we reach out to development services to see what kind of development it is. If it's a single family, like we have some condos that are coming in and they're selling those individually. The way development services is looking at it is they're a single family resident, so they'd be charged that fee, even though there's two residents living in a building, which you'd think would be multifamily because there's two families in a building, they're charging me as a single family. So we work together with development services depending how we do.
Yeah, I just kind of wondered how that worked if somebody put in an apartment building and you had 20 apartments, two to four people per apartment in this little area is going to take up a lot more water.
Right.
But there's still going to be charges if they were just,
Yep.
okay.
Hopefully the next slide will hopefully explain a little bit more to you guys. So we have system connections fees for Reverence and Blossom Rock to the south as new development. Those are fairly low. And the reason why those are fairly low is because they're actually building all the infrastructure. They paid for the 30-inch water line. They paid for the new storage tank and booster station. They paid to expand our plant. So we're not charging those infrastructure fees to them since they're paying for them themselves. These fees are eventually, since adding more customers, we need a building to house our customer service reps. We need equipment to maintain all that new infrastructure down there. So these are the fees that we have out that cover those costs for those additional items because we get additional customers.
So you're saying, and I understand what you said, I just don't know how to word it.
Sure.
If I want to build, if move to Apache Junction and I live up here and I buy an acre lot and want to build a house, I've got to pay $6,000.
Yep.
But if I just buy a house down here south of the 60, I only pay $500
That's correct.
because they've paid everything else.
But-
Okay. How do you justify that to?
But remember what we did. We formed a district, and the district is now taxing you. So that property owner is still paying for that infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
But he's paying for it in a different way through his taxes rather than one upfront fee.
Okay.
We didn't put in the 30-inch lines.
Well, no, I
We
know,
didn't
but I'm
pay
just
for 'em.
wondering how you're gonna justify to somebody, or explain to somebody who's building a house up here that, no, you can't pay $500 or just 500, you've got to pay 6,000, you know.
It's those infrastructure costs, and we can go through that process with them if
Okay.
somebody asks that question.
I mean, I can imagine that's going to cause you a few headaches.
And we actually looked at it when the developer came in. Does it make more sense for us to collect the system connection fees and slowly build it over time, or allow the developer to build it and let them take the risk on just in case development slows down, something happens? We're not stuck with those costs that we now have to spread across our existing customers to pay for this $50 million in infrastructure that we don't have the customer base to pay for.
Okay.
Is there a price comparison for connection fees across the, our neighboring cities?
We could probably get that.
For similar, like we're talking, I understand large development and how that's all based, but for, single-family homes in an already built-out area, it'd be nice to see what their connection fees are.
And that's part of our system connection fee report that Tisha Bice provided to us, and also our water resource acquisition fee. It was in there. We could provide that information to you if you'd like. The next step is water acquisition fees. We raised them quite a bit last year. It was $1,000 for a water acquisition fee. We raised it to $3,500. This was based on the cost that we were getting. We looked at leasing additional Indian supplies. We looked at what the price of Verde River water is going to be. We've looked at the price of desalinization and came up with a formula through Tisha Bice in a study to raise it to $3,486. Again, there's not any more water supplies out there to go out and purchase a lot of times, so the price keeps going up. As we talked about before, when we leased the Brick water 10 years ago, it was $3,000 an acre foot. We're getting a prices over $20,000 an acre foot now. So as you can see, it's almost 10 times the amount we paid. So we wish we'd have bought more now. It's tough to justify spending $3 million for new development. So we have to work towards that. And this is the fund that we put away in a savings account so that one day when we need additional water supplies, we can go purchase those for those new developments, for those new homes.
So when does that come into play for the person who just paid the $6,500 to connect?
So there's two different phases. So this fee comes in at plat. So when you do a final plat, they have to pay the water resource acquisition fee because now we're guaranteeing them for 100 years that they're going to have a water supply to that lot in that platted subdivision.
So what you're saying is if I decided to buy that piece of land and I would like to have water, since that's essential, that my startup before I could turn on a spigot is about $10,000. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that something that normally if you had a builder, they would build that into the construction cost?
That would
when
be
you're
built into their cost.
buying a home?
Yes.
Okay. Just kind of wonder where everybody's going to come up with that. From the bank, I see.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could ask, how come our fees for this kind of thing are they lower than Arizona Water?
These fees are not lower than Arizona Water currently.
Okay. And why is that? Is it, if you could explain the difference between the private company and the Community Facilities District?
So the way private companies work is when they put in facilities, it has to be used and useful, and they have to go in from the Corporation Commission. So as they're going in for a rate case now for an increase of like 34%, this is actually from infrastructure they put in 3 years ago. So they have to build it and show that they're using it before they can actually get funds back. So their system connection fees are fairly low because they're building this infrastructure as they go, but it takes a long time for them to get it back, the money back, because of the way they can't just go in and say, okay, we can raise our fees. They have to prove where they're at and slowly work through that process, and it's typically 3 years after they've already spent those dollars. In this case, we try getting it so that we're up front, so that we're not going in the back end trying to collect those dollars and raise our rates at a huge jumps like that. Does that make sense?
And and also I've noticed in Arizona Water, it's tricky too, Mike, when it depends also on where the water line is.
Correct.
And so it can be,
I guess, in our case, in
Whole
most of
different
our
world.
service areas, we have water mains in front of people's properties. There's only probably, I believe, maybe 100 lots that we do not have water mains in front of. Those lots that, in Arizona Water Company, if that was the case, in those cases, we typically go and install that water line, get the service out to them, and then they would pay this $10,000 fee. If you're in an Arizona Water Company service area, they're not in it to build the population here in Apache Junction. They're a private utility. They only make money off of selling water. So now, as the developer, you have to pay to extend that main from wherever it's at. It could be 60 feet, it could be 500 feet from your property, and now you're paying $50,000 to $100,000 to get water service to your property.
Yeah,
In fact,
kind of a trade-off, yeah.
my
Is
neighbor
that what you're trying to get at? Yes.
wanted to put in a home, wanted to bring in Arizona water, and it was going to be going across 2 properties in length. So we're talking, what, 150, 200 foot? And they had gotten from Arizona Water, it was going to cost them over $100,000
Yeah.
just to bring the water to their property. And then they'd have to move it from the meter all the way to the house. And they ended up doing a well themselves.
Right.
And the well was a lot cheaper, but again, they don't have the same quality of water. But it's something that, it's very expensive for Arizona Water to move it.
And that's still an option for anybody that's in our service area. You can drill a well, but as Chairman Wilson was saying, roughly a well to drill the depth that we need to here in Arizona is $20,000 to $30,000. So to pay the $10,000 fee, save a third of what you actually would spend to drill a well makes sense. And then you're guaranteed a water quality too that you don't have to manage, or a dry well over years.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Over here. Why is single family more than multiple family?
A hookup is a hookup.
So typically on a single family, you'll have a lawn or some additional water usage compared to a multifamily where you wouldn't have that. You'd have one amenity that serves multiple families that live around it, like apartment complex or condos or something like that. So you wouldn't have as much landscaping and different things that are outside.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Don't
Okay.
see any.
Last one I have is a class and compensation study, and I think you guys heard a little bit about this from the city last night. We're planning on doing the same class and comp study that they did, roughly a 3.5% increase to the compensation plan. So if you're in one section, you're slowly moving up all your steps, 3.5%. And then we're also recommending a 1-step increase for all employees for roughly a 6% increase for each employee. We do have a 3% increase to our health insurance. We're on the same insurance plan as the city. And basically, we're going to split those costs, the premium costs, between the district and employees, so roughly 1.5% a piece. Again, even though we're getting 6%, is different than the 3% for insurance. Insurance is a portion of that. It's not 6% or 3% of your salary that you actually have to pay for insurance, but it's 3% increase to what you're currently paying. Any questions on that one?
Don't see any.
Okay. And then we'd like to come up with an upcoming schedule. So we have a tentative budget scheduled for May 16th, 2023 at 6 p.m. here in the City Council chambers at 300 East Superstition Boulevard, Apache Junction, Arizona, 85119. Then we'll look at a final budget approval of June 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the City Council chambers here in Apache Junction at 300 East Superstition Boulevard in Apache Junction, Arizona. And we'll be representing some of this information I presented to you tonight over the next couple board meetings.
With answers to questions.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
District Manager's Report. Brian.
I have no report, Your Honor.
District Director's Report. Mike. No report, sir. District Treasurer's Report. Leslie. Okay, since there's nothing more, I'll adjourn.